Thank you very much, Chair of the Committee.
Dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to be here on behalf of the Secretary General here today. Allow me to begin by welcoming you to the opening of the United Nations Forum on the Question of Palestine in support of a peaceful and just solution to the Israel-Palestine conflict. The Palestinian question has been on the agenda of our organization almost since its inception, over 70 years ago. Some of the first decisions and engagements of the United Nations had been aimed at resolving that conflict, and the UN remains deeply involved. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict also goes to the heart of the Charter of the UN and its fundamental principles based on the painful experiences of 2 world wars, that conflicts be solved without recourse to violence, that the dignity and worth of the human person be respected, and that the acquisition and annexation of territory of another state by force are inadmissible. Over the near century that has passed since the Israeli-Palestinian conflict began, the international community and the United Nations have been unable to put an end to the occupation and realize a just and lasting peace. As a result, Palestinians have endured prolonged occupation and the denial of their legitimate right to self-determination and statehood. The peace process has stalled. Voices of hate and confrontation are deepening mistrust and posing a constant challenge to reaching a sustainable peace. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, the situation is not moving in the direction of sustainable peace. As we have witnessed over the last weeks, security incidents and provocations continue to dangerously escalate the already precarious situation in the Gaza, in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, and at times inside Israel. The indiscriminate launching of rockets from Gaza into Israel and the subsequent Israeli military strikes on Gaza threaten to derail the precarious calm. A new conflict would be devastating for the Palestinian people. It would have consequences for Israelis who live in the vicinity of the Gaza perimeter and would be likely to have regional repercussions. The Secretary General and his Special Coordinator have called on all sides to exercise maximum restraint as the situation remains extremely tense. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza remains defined by prolonged suffering and deep despair. The coastal enclave remains under severe closures and restrictions on the freedom of movement of people and goods, while the military build-up by Hamas and other militant groups continues. Gaza is an integral part of the Palestinian state, and Palestinian unity is needed for a politically stable, economically viable, sovereign and independent state of Palestine. I welcome the tireless efforts of Egypt to continue dialogue with Palestinian factions with the aim of maintaining stability in Gaza and achieving genuine reconciliation. I urge all parties to remain engaged in this critical effort. I urge Israel to lift restrictions on the movement of people and goods with due consideration of its legitimate security concerns. Unless these restrictions ease, the Palestinian economy can never be self-sustaining or generate enough tax revenues for the Palestinian Authority to sustain its operation without donor support. These restrictions also hamper the efforts of the United Nations and other humanitarian agencies. In the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, planning and construction of Israeli settlements continue to advance unabated. I reiterate that settlements are illegal under international law and remain a substantial obstacle to peace. Recent developments relating to the Palestinian Authority's clearance revenues have put the stability and the very existence of the Palestinian Authority at grave risk. Unless the standoff is resolved, it could have a substantial impact on the Palestinian economy, resulting in reduced purchasing power and further reduction in the GDP growth, both in the West Bank and Gaza. Both parties should continue to implement their bilateral agreements and avoid taking unilateral actions that undermine the two-state solution. Excellencies, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, leaders have a responsibility to their populations to reverse this negative trajectory and pave the way towards peace, stability, and reconciliation. The only way to achieve the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people and lasting peace and security for Israel is through the two-state solution. As the Secretary General often reiterates, there is no plan B. It is well past time to resolve the conflict, and the solution is clear. Indeed, has been clear for a long time. The realization of the vision of two states, Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace and security, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states, based on relevant UN resolutions, long-held principles, previous agreements, and international law. The parties to the conflict owe it to their citizens, to future generations of Israelis and Palestinians, and their international community owes it to them to exert all possible efforts to break the cycle of violence, to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, and to practice tolerance and live together in peace with one another as good neighbors. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.